Hi there, and welcome to this presentation on the PAT LMS. This presentation is designed to explain the concepts behind the architecture of the LMS, and so this is for anyone in the business that has a responsibility to manage and maintain our training content through the LMS and to explain how it all ties together. So it's broken into a few sections. This first section talks about the PAT LMS IP, which stands for Intellectual Property. Architecture, this is one of three sections, and the first thing we're going to talk about is role-based modules. Now, a bit of an overview. Everyone knows that knowledge is power. What some people may not understand is this is actually how companies win, how people win as well as with better knowledge than the other guy. Another way to think of knowledge is IP, intellectual property. This is the knowledge that is unique to our business. It's the way that we conduct our work. It's our know-how. The value of a person and of a company is in their intellectual property. The more unique the IP, the more value it has, the more the company can charge, the more it can pay its people, provided they put into effect the IP. There's no point creating IP and people don't use it. There's only two ways a business can make money. You've either got to be a low-cost producer, so you've got to be able to produce the service in the market cheaper than the other guy, or you've got to do it better. And so SCS, our aim is not to be the cheapest, although we have to keep a close eye on our costs, but where we make our mark in the world is that we do it better, and people are prepared to pay more for a higher service because a lot of our competitors aren't that good. And so we put ourselves forward as having the best service, which is a result of our IP. The way SCS captures IP and shares it with our people is through our PAT LMS. LMS stands for Learning Management System. Our LMS is the foundation of everything. It is the organisational excellence platform that we use to drive excellence through our business. Relentlessly improving our IP and our people and systems is ultimately how SCS people win. This module explains the PAT LMS architecture, which is the framework PAT uses to store and share our IP with our people to ensure we win. So some key concepts. Job titles are made up of one or more roles. Roles are made up of one or more modules. A module, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more on the next slide, is a container. If you can think of it like a bucket, and it's what we store our IP in. Our IP sets the standard of work that the leaders of the business, that's our SLT and our ELT, believe will deliver the best results for the company and therefore our people. Just a quick word on some of these acronyms. So ELT means Executive Leadership Team. These are people like the CEO, COO, CIO, CFO, etc. So CEO, Chief Executive Officer, COO, Chief Operations Officer. Also referred to as the C-suite. Ultimately, the buck stops with them. SLT means our Senior Leadership Team. This is our department heads or head of departments and our Senior Business Unit Managers. Okay, so that's the first key concept to get your head around. This structure is how we tie our IP back to our people. Now, let's talk about PAT modules. PAT has an inbuilt module publisher, and we can use this to capture and manage our IP. Another way to think of capturing our IP is creating content for our LMS. The authors who create content are usually in the SLT, ELT, but anyone can be taught to do this. We recommend using the module publisher, MP, for written content. However, PAT allows the use of any commonly used word publisher. You can use Microsoft Word, Google Docs, etc. Anything that can output a PDF file. Advanced users can even create content by programming directly in HTML in the module publisher. And you do that because that's the fastest way to render a module. And you can even use PAT SDs. These are strategy documents. They're a special PAT web-based document for framing up information and sharing information as your content document as a way to share your IP. This option is useful where there's value attaching a forum to the content where you can encourage tribal knowledge sharing. So everyone that's involved with that bit of knowledge can have a conversation around it, and you can drop in and you can see the history of the conversation and how the thinking's being formed. And we do this via chats in the SD versus the more traditional version control method. So it's a slightly different way of managing our IP. Testing of written modules is done via an online quiz and can be done on desktops, PCs, laptops, tablets, or mobile phones. For deeper learning, and testing, we strongly recommend the use of comprehension audits. A comprehension audit tests practical knowledge of the learnings on the job. Supervisor follows prompts on a mobile phone, usually in the work environment, versus the online quiz, which is a multi-choice test, which is conducted by the student after they have studied the document and or video representing the IP. Modules are commonly set to repeat, because repetition is the mother of all learning, to a cycle, which is defined by the module author. Authors are ideally the head of department and or senior manager, who is responsible ultimately for the department outcomes. Most of the learning is designed to be self-driven by the student through PAT. However, failing to pass online tests triggers PAT to auto-task supervisors to get personally involved and provide one-on-one coaching as needed to support the student. And we call that process training to the gap. So the expectation is that students are smart enough, that's why they work for us, they can learn 80% of what they need to by studying the IP that we present to them. And where they struggle, we will trigger a supervisor to get involved one-on-one and help them through that bit of knowledge that they need help with. So this is another way for us to look at how a module exists in the PAT universe. So the first part is that we get to create content or capture the IP, and we can do that using documents. The recommended method is the module publisher. You can also use strategy documents, you can program directly into HTML, or you can use other publishers like Google Docs and Microsoft Word, as long as it outputs to a PDF. So there's huge flexibility there. The other really powerful way to store and impart knowledge is through the use of videos. So any video capturing software, a couple of examples here, we've got Loom, which is free, it's a Google add-on, it's brilliant. Camtasia, we have a couple of licenses at SCS, if people want to use that. This particular video has been created using Camtasia, and you'll see the value of that is that it can do a lot of manipulations and animations through the presentation to make it more engaging and easier to follow. So we create the content, we capture the IP, and the next thing is we quiz it. And so there's the quiz, which is done by the student. This is online. Funny little image there, someone's cheating. Don't really recommend that, although one of the benefits of having the LMS and PAT is it's got this concept of a thing called open learning. So you can actually open the module and study it whilst you are sitting the test. And why we like that is because even though you're not memorizing it, you're engaging with the content. And because we've got the recertification cycle, over time the knowledge tends to seep into the brain. So that's the quiz. And then in the supporting that, we have this concept of a thing called a comprehension audit, which I've explained earlier, where a supervisor will come and inspect your knowledge in the workplace. So the quiz is kind of at a desk, it's kind of in a classroom situation. The audit is a practical assessment of your comprehension in the workplace. And so we test the knowledge. And then the last bit is we have this thing called a recertification cycle. One thing we know with teaching is if we teach you something, you'll forget. And how we can ensure that we gain long-term retention is through a recertification cycle where you're constantly exposed to the knowledge. And this is all managed in the PAT LMS. Okay, now let's an example of how this all hangs together. So for illustration purposes, let's assume we're a cleaning company and there are only 3 jobs in our company. We've got a CEO, their main responsibility is sales, account management, training and financials. We've got a supervisor, their main responsibility is shift management and training. And we've got a cleaner and their main responsibility is cleaning. And so that image that we're looking at here kind of illustrates what that structure of the company may look like. Now, if we translate this to how PAT will store this information, a job title is made up of one or more roles. So the first piece of the puzzle is to understand and define what roles make up a job title. Now, understanding a role defines a specific set of skills. Note, there is one rule in PAT, it's a configuration rule that you must always have one role that is the same as the job title. This catches some people out when they're designing their architecture. So just make sure that you get your head around that. And it's reasonable to assume there are some skills that everyone must know. For example, everyone must know key health and safety skills, including how to report an accident. For this reason, we have always had a role in PAT called all staff, meaning all staff are required to have these skills. So you can see with this image here how the architecture is starting to mimic the architecture in PAT. Okay, so let's take this a bit further. The last piece is connecting modules to the roles. So modules are our IP. We talked about that earlier. This is our know-how, how we've decided work should be performed. The IP represents the standards we set as the company, and it's actually these standards that determine if we win or lose. So let's take a closer look at the job, at the cleaner's job title. Now, whilst the person's main responsibility is cleaning, what else does the person need to do to fulfill the job title of cleaner? Sure, they need to know how to clean carpets and how we wipe down glass surfaces, but there's also IP needed to handle cleaning products safely, DGs, and record labour hours. And together, all of this IP makes up the job required for a cleaner to be successful in our business. So I hope that makes sense. In the PAT database, this, which we've just explained, this image on the left, plus the other two roles, ends up looking like this. So this is how the architecture or the structure of the module to role to job title looks in the background. Okay, so a few key shout outs about this structure. Firstly, we've introduced a concept of a thing called a department. And all businesses have departments. When businesses are small, managers look after multiple departments. And as the businesses grow, heads of department and senior managers are employed to look after those departments. And ultimately, these senior managers are responsible for the outcomes, the output that the departments produce. The outcomes departments produce are in turn reliant on the IP, the training that goes in to support the people to do the job, the input. For this reason, senior leaders are responsible for the quality of IP and PAT for their departments and business units. So the second thing we've introduced in our database representation is a concept called SOPAC. Now, SOPAC stands for Standard Operating Procedures, Policies and Concepts. And we use this categorization to categorize our modules. So SOP stands for Standing Operating Procedures. These are our how-tos, how to do a thing. P stands for policies. These are the laws of our company. These are the things that we believe in. This is where we talk about things like sexual harassment. C is our concepts, and these are the values we believe in. These are our whys. This is the values that we live by, things like respect and integrity, etc. The third thing we've introduced at this stage of the presentation is the recognition that there's this concept of commonality across job titles. All job titles have the all staff role, and you can see that, we've highlighted that in red. And you can also see there's some other commonality where both the CEO and the supervisor job titles have a training role. And this is important to minimize the administration of the system by creating roles that are interchangeable within job titles. Once you get your head around that, the maintenance of this entire structure becomes a lot easier. Okay, key comments. The example in this slide deck we've just been through is a gross oversimplification. In reality, the module to role to job title architecture requires a lot of critical thinking, and that's hard. So here's some recommendations. Firstly, senior leaders in the business are responsible for the architecture and IP in their department. They need to own it. Secondly, deep thought needs to be applied to create an architecture that ensures the job titles and the roles are fit for purpose. The third point is kind of the acid test to the second point, that once created, the senior leaders need to be able to step back and confidently agree with their hand on their heart that the structure that they've created will ensure brilliant outcomes for their department. Now, it's not about getting this right. This is definitely about progress over perfection. One of the really good things about the LMS is it's fluid, it's dynamic, and it evolves over time. As we find issues, we go back and we tweak the structure and we make it better and better over time. Here are some gotchas and some ideas to consider. Firstly, the job titles, roles and modules, JRM, architecture, needs to align with the employment agreement, which needs to align with the PAR, performance agreement review. Ultimately, we pay people to perform roles, and how well they do this determines how successful the business is, which is a direct link back to the IP we give them and how effectively we enforce their performance of that IP, which we're going to close on in this presentation. Secondly, think about people management. Companies require different levels of supervisory skills. So consider splitting up into 3 levels. So for example, you might have level 1 supervisory skills, which are reasonably low level, things like setting users up in business systems and Colossus and PAT, accounting systems, etc. Level 2, middle level skills like pay reviews, performance reviews. Level 3, this is the high level stuff like being able to conduct a legally compliant performance management process. So put some critical thinking into how you're going to structure that. The third idea to consider This is the commonality when constructing your roles. In database language, this is called normalization. And it is a way to dramatically improve the efficacy of how you manage your data structure. We have a similar concept in PAT. So there will be modules that apply across multiple job titles. For example, all staff modules. However, you need to also consider things like customers and suppliers. And we've been caught out in the past by creating an overall umbrella role called all staff, and then we've connected customers, and there's a whole lot of stuff in the all staff, so we've connected them, but then there's a whole lot of stuff in the all staff role that was completely irrelevant to the customers. So customers and suppliers are also key stakeholders, and there will be IP we need them to own to ensure our collective success. Therefore, you may need to split roles such as all staff into all staff and all stakeholders. For example, you may have an escalation policy with key contacts that apply to all stakeholders, not just all staff, but also customers and suppliers. But modules such as sexual harassment will apply only to all staff and not need to be communicated or taught to all stakeholders. So this is an example of the critical thinking the business leaders need to apply when designing the job to role to module architecture. Okay, so part 2, customer-specific modules. So what we've talked about so far are company-specific modules and how we run the business. To explain this, I want to expand our thinking, our knowledge. So another way to visualize this is like this, where we've got purple's the job title, green's the role, orange is the module. And what this does is it illustrates that a person is connected to a job title, roles are connected to job titles, and modules are connected to roles, which is exactly how the company modules work. When a person is assigned a job title in PAT, they automatically inherit the entire role and module association. So once you've set it up once, it's set and walk away. A key benefit to the structure is if any changes are made at the module or the role level, the job title automatically inherits the change. Therefore, all of the people assigned to that job title are automatically updated. And that significantly simplifies the administration of how we manage our IP and ensure it gets to the right people. Now, not all things are created equal. So using this architecture controls how we disseminate our IP to our people. Now, disseminate is a really important word when we're talking about training. And I've got the Wikipedia explanation down the bottom. I'm just going to jump down there quickly. Disseminate means to spread something, especially information, widely. It's how we get IP into our people's heads. We disseminate our IP. And the purpose of that is ensuring that everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. This architecture that we use in PAT enables very fast training outcomes. You can train people up within days to get the basics of the role sorted. It also creates automatic training records that are auditable, and one of the biggest benefits is it provides the ability for rapid performance management capability, and that can save us weeks and weeks of pain. When something goes wrong in a business, it's always either a person or a process that's failed. So processes are design elements that the senior leader is responsible for. People is the people management. That's the hard part. If we haven't got good systems around our training, and we can prove that, when someone's misbehaving and we need to fix it and address it, if we don't have a system like PAT up and running, we have to start from ground zero. We've got to start building the training, creating the training records, and we lose normally 4 to 8 weeks, which is really stressful for the supervisor and also the staff member. Whereas if we have this intelligence baked into our HR systems, from the get-go, you'll find your ability to performance management comes down to hours and days, not weeks and months. So it takes a lot of stress out of the business. However, often we need to enhance our business IP to support unique customer requirements, which is why PAT allows modules to be connected to customers and customers to be connected directly to staff, rather than modules connected to staff via roles and job titles. So there's the two systems here. Modules can be connected through roles, which go to the job title, but we can also do customer-specific idiosyncratic knowledge, which is unique to the customer, and we can connect that directly to the customer account, and then we can connect the people to the customer accounts. And so this way, the knowledge, whether it's designed to be required by the business or by a specific customer, flows directly through to the people that need it, and it completes their training journey. The third part of this section, on the last part, is about, actually I've got a mistake, they've changed it. This is about, so that's right, company-specific modules. So first bit was about business modules, which apply across the business. Second part was about customer-specific. This is about company-specific modules. And this recognises that there's always exceptions to the rule. Oops, I need to change that. There are some skills that some people are required to perform that have nothing to do with their job title or a customer requirement. Still, someone has to own the responsibility, for example, a fire warden or a first aid or something. And PAT enables this by allowing modules to be linked directly to a person. Okay, so that's pretty much the architecture. So let's summarize this, shall we? The PAT LMS allows you to structure any learning requirement for any job title, that's section 1 here, any customer-specific need, that's section 2, or any company-specific obligation. So you can structure any IP requirement required in the business and for customers through the PAT LMS structure now that you understand the architecture. So let's talk about the path to excellence. So the big call out here is that the foundation of our path to excellence is our IP. So there's really only 2 steps, and that results in the outcome, which is number 3. Number 1 is we provide the IP. Number 2 is we use the escalation policy if you need help. And number 3 is we've achieved excellence. So how that works is, and we've got our employee hat on here and we need to do a good job. How do we do that? Well, we just reference the SCS IP for the answer on how to do that. So that's step 1. And that either solves a problem or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then we do go to step 2 and we use the escalation policy. And if we do that properly, we will always achieve wealth, health and happiness. If we don't have our IP set up initially and structured well for the business, we don't get off first base. We can't even get onto the first step of our path to excellence, which is why it's critical that department heads and senior leaders take this seriously. What about for the supervisors? Well, this is what it looks like for their path to excellence. So whenever anything goes wrong, that's either a person or a process. So the very first thing we've got to look at, and again, processes are not the responsibility of the supervisors, that's the responsibility of the senior leadership team and the people that architect and design our systems. But when it comes to people, the very first thing a supervisor's got to ask is, well, was there a quality module? And it's a binary outcome, there was or there wasn't. If there wasn't, then the fault lies with the head of the department, and the supervisor's responsibility is now to task the head of the department and request a quality module is created. As soon as that step is taken, it falls into the PAT ecosystem and it will auto-escalate all the way through to the CEO. So that will happen. Okay, so what if there was a quality module? Well, then the next question is, well, why wasn't the IP applied? And we have looked at this and we've got to the point of now thinking that there's only ever 2 reasons. The first reason is there's no good reason. Someone was lazy, they couldn't be bothered, whatever. Now, if that's the case, the fault lies with the employee. The supervisor's responsibility at that stage is to drop straight into performance management. Use the 5 whys, do the root cause analysis and corrective actions, and put it all through the PAR. And as I mentioned earlier, if you've got your LMS set up correctly with the IP, this process here becomes incredibly quick. And the goal of a performance management process is not to manage someone out of the business like a lot of companies do. The goal of performance management is to identify why we aren't getting performance and how we're going to do it. So it needs to be approached with a really positive mindset to get a positive result for the employee. Okay, so we've got to that far. Let's go back down our flow chart. Why wasn't the IP applied? The other reason is we're too busy. Well, yeah, that happens a lot, and we've got a way to deal with that, and it's called using the escalation policy. So the next question is, did they escalate? If they didn't, then the fault again lies with the employee, and we've got to go down this path of doing the performance management. Again, it's super rapid because we've got everything documented, so we can get an outcome really quickly. If they did escalate, then we've got a really valuable staff member. They've done everything we've asked them to do. They're off the hook. The fault now lies with the supervisor. Something's happened at his level or her level and above, and that's what needs to be done. And so we want to start a performance management with the supervisor to find out how we can identify what's gone wrong there through the 5 whys, do our root cause analysis, corrective action. We do this via the PAR. And that is how we achieve excellence. So that's the end of this presentation. So what we've learned is the architecture of the LMS and how critical that is in terms of our path to excellence. And hopefully we've got an understanding that without this LMS architecture being implemented as step one, there is no step two. We're not even on the path to excellence. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope that cleared up some questions, and look forward to seeing some outstanding results in our LMS architecture. Thanks for watching.